building a product called GPT Engineer. And the thing is, now it's very clear to us from how users use our product. And I get DMs every day from someone that found our tool and they've fallen in love with it. So we are actually going to move our full branding over to the name of what our product actually is now. It's Lovable, according to our users.
Are you going to change or remove or not use the GPT Engineer
so
anymore?
I will unveil exactly what is happening, and also what is behind these breakthroughs later this month. Stay tuned.
So in November there is a launch, and so how does your days look like now when you're a little bit like hitting this focus on the launch or the milestone?
Yeah.
Any specifics happening right now?
So when you're getting a lot of user growth and everyone is reaching out to you, it's easy to get distracted. So what I'm reminding the team about is that the most important thing is to keep staying focused on making the product itself better and better and better. There's a long way to go until we are completely automated. We have completely automated ourselves. So that's the main focus. The second focus is to make it easier for users to know the tricks to get value out of our product, to educate them. And the last part is more about, if we're doing a launch, then one, we're educating our people, and then two, we're explaining when you should use our product and getting them into the door.
So has even also your attention switched more to go to marketing, communication, messaging, even one step notch higher the last couple of weeks because of this?
Yeah, so I'm emphasizing that the product is the top focus. But yes, there is the reason I say this is because it's easy to get more like, what do we do now to scale this up? There's the fire burning. There's so many ways to get 10x users for us right now.
Yeah.
I told a colleague of mine, that I'm having you today on the podcast, and he had to try GPT Engineer. He hadn't tried it before, and he came back this morning and said, "Jesus Christ, I built this thing in minutes, and it was awesome." He was so surprised, and he's still an AI person, and it's easy to understand how it becomes lovable for people that had no idea you can do this kind of things. Right.
And the background is fun. You said earlier, like literally, you did something to prove a point that this could be useful. LLMs can be useful for programming, and this is way before we saw the Devons and everything like that. So, how did that come about? Yeah, I'm a little bit curious on that one. What was the point you wanted to prove, and what was the context?
So I co-founded a company called Depict AI.
Oh yeah,
I was CTO there. And there we liked having like philosophical dinner discussions about how are things going to impact X and Y, and my point was that very rapidly these large language models are going to be composed into systems that can replace most of the work that we do in software engineering. And
I guess you were having this with Oliver and et al.
This was with Oliver Edholm, exactly, and others. I felt that no one out there was imaginative enough in this. And then proving the point was me sitting down over a few weekends and putting together this open source tool that you, as a developer, explain what you want to build in your terminal. And then it writes out all the files, and you can just click, or it also runs the entire project.
So you can, in normal language, without being a programmer, explain the purpose, the objective function, what you want it to happen, and then it can sort that out systemically. Yeah,
this was like a very simple way, but a lot of people were very, very impressed by this.
But I think we should go into more depth about this very shortly. But we're very proud to have you here. Anton Osika, is that the right way to pronounce it? Or? Yeah, awesome. We've known each other for a number of times, and I mean, you're very famous, I think, in the Stockholm AI community. You've been part of so many of the famous startups that we do have. I mean,
Sana, you've been working at Sana. We had Sana people here. Oliver was here, a year ago or something like that, when Depict AI, that you also co-founded. So you're a profile for sure. Cool.
Yeah, but also that, the GPT Engineer, I think it's one of the thing that really hit the popular media in a way that very few other open source projects from Sweden has done. And I mean, it has now over 50,000 stars or something on GitHub, right?
Yeah, it became the world's most popular one in code generation, among many others. Yeah.
So an open source project, GPT Engineer, hitting 52,000 stars. That's cool.
I mean, you've been part of so many, super famous Swedish startups, and now since last year, founding this new one, and we're going to go more into depth in that shortly. What Lovable and GPT Engineer really is. So anyone, and certainly me as well, is very much looking forward to hearing more of the tech and the history and the future about, AI software engineering in some way.
Yeah.
And I heard someone say that potentially you have like over 1,000 products built on this now. That they're not just used it for prototyping; it's actually some products being used, right? Is that correct?
Now, some of the projects built, you can go into the website and see what others are building. The ones that are happy to do that in public, but there's more than 1,000 per day now, and some are launching these commercial products that were built only by talking and not by writing any of the code themselves.
But give us a couple of few numbers on Lovable right now. That's a good entry point. But you have some impressive numbers here, like 1,000 projects or products being built on per day.
Yeah.
Tell us some more fun, interesting numbers.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the driver of this more explosive growth. By the way, the product is still called in beta, so it's like not an officially launched product. But the growth has been much faster recently, thanks to that the AI doesn't get lost, it doesn't get confused. It actually reliably takes you all the way to something that has business value for you. And last month we doubled the number of paying users for this, and currently somewhere about.
So double in a month.
Yeah.
It's not just double in a month.
Correct.
Nice.
Okay, you're going to go deeper into this soon, but before that, can you just perhaps describe yourself a bit? Who is really Anton Osika? How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a physicist in training, and I'm a startup founder and CEO, but I think I'm not this normal smooth talking
yes, you
businessy
okay.
startup
What do you mean, like
founder.
smooth talking as Elon?
I'm more, I think I identify a bit with Elon, especially after reading his crazy biography. But what people say about me is that I see around corners what will happen in the future, not just one corner, but many steps of how does the future look like. And I have a lot of initiative taking and excitement for building cool technology. And finally, having a lot of positive impact in the world since I was a teenager. That's something I think about.
You think about that?
Yeah.
In what way, since a teenager? How
I mean,
how does that materialize?
I think my dad has always been like this environmentalist champion. So part of it was there, but I just thinking about all the way that the world is messed up made me very, very angry as a teenager, and set out to do something good here. And then, what's the best way to do that? This is many steps of reasoning, so it's not that intuitive. But being an entrepreneur is arguably the most effective way to have an impact.
If you really want to change the world, become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I would say so.
With your focus of what you want to change.
That you could do that, but if you only work towards this grassroots mission, you will usually not get anywhere.
Interesting.
It's usually when you solve an important and valuable business problem, like let's say Bill Gates set out and what did he work on? Well, selling a lot of software. But now he's basically curing polio, which is this horrible disease that has affected and ruined millions of people's lives. By first doing that and then focusing on doing something good in the world.
Have you ever thought about going more academic? I mean,
yes, good question. Actually, in university, I was set on there's so many fun research topics that I would love to go very, very deep into. But it was when I was at CERN, which is the place where they discovered the Higgs boson, the big particle accelerator, that I see all of these super smart people that are working extremely hard at an extremely inelastic problem. So you're not making progress, even though you have so much smart people. While as out in the industry, there is so much more room and higher elasticity for doing something useful, something that makes a difference. So then I figured, no, academia is too slow, and you have to be.
And when you were in CERN, in what capacity were you there?
I was there for a summer for 3 months.
Yeah,
and I worked in the supersymmetry group in Atlas, one of the accelerators.
So in a sense, getting a feel for, is research for me, or am I more of an engineer product?
Yeah, I got the feel for that. I mean, my profile is better used elsewhere, and I think for most people that is the case. You don't make so much impact there.
Do you think? Okay, so I guess we can come to this question later. But if you were to give some advice for people that are younger than you, and thinking, should you go the academic or more scientific route, or should you do the engineering route? Do you think everyone should do the engineering route, or do you think what's your thinking there?
I think there are many different objectives in choosing routes. So I will have to first say something about the objective, and how I think about my objective. It's unlock the most human potential, and that starts with myself. How can I live up to my full potential? And one of the timeless things you should do to unlock your full potential is to surround yourself with more experienced, super smart people. And you can do that in academia. A few years ago, I think it's easy to do that in the industry as well, if you work in tech at least. I'm not sure if that's the case anymore. It's tech is not hiring so much. So I would say, first of all, find very, very smart people in your kind of age group or whatever that is, and maybe do some startup together. At least find them, and then see what resonates with you with regards to academia or working.
Because you can grow in different ways. I mean, and there are people with different personalities, and what they like, of course. But also doing a startup and becoming an entrepreneur is not for everyone, I would say. I mean, you have successfully done it a number of times, of course. So it seems to
fit your mentality.
It resonates well with you. Have you ever, thought about the question about having the co-founder or founder role, and then also having to think about how I'm going to raise the next founding round, etc., and versus being more of an engineer, perhaps joining a company that already have proven ground in some way. You seems to have chosen the entrepreneurial kind of path mainly.
Yes. So there is I've thought about that for sure, but I think where I thrive a lot is to see opportunities and say we have to do this other thing, and we can do that in a larger company as well. But I've ended up here. That's circumstances and my way of thinking and acting is one.
You used the word elasticity, in terms of I would argue that being in a founder position and being in a startup position, it's maybe one of the most extreme elasticity situations you can be. And if you're gravitating to, let's not be rigid in focusing on the old product, but thinking what it could be or pivot and everything like that. So has that something to do with it? That if you are drawn, and that is a larger mission that you have as a person, then I would argue that fits quite well with where you're going and the way you have chosen a career path.
Yeah, well said. Unlocking your this most challenging thing you can do it might be to be a founder. It depends a bit. Some people have an easy time, but there are so many new challenges, and you can always do more. You can always do more.
You can always do more. You can always learn the other.
Yeah, but I think there is a parallel universe where I would have gone into more research. My friends say you should work in AI, actually applied AI on Anthropic or OpenAI or something.
Yes. Perhaps we should move to just speaking a bit more about the origins of GPT Engineer and then Lovable after that. We spoke about it at the beginning a bit, but if you were to just, phrase it a bit more, you said, you had the discussion at the PICT with Oliver and others, and you want to prove a point in some way. How did you actually get started, and why did you think, that AI could work as an AI software engineer?
So there's two steps here. I got started with the project just to prove the point, and it turned out that this was actually a very useful tool that millions used. Then to start a company was a much more serious decision, of course. And I mean, with many conversations with my co-founder about the future of the Pict, but what I saw as the big change that we're going to go through is that, well, we currently have developers using AI. There's this autocomplete copilot feature for the most developers use, but I think like this is just a short temporary period in how software development works. In the future, you are going to talk to an AI system and not look at the code. Before we looked at zeros and ones, then we looked at a bit more like object-oriented programming, and then even higher abstractions. Soon it's plain English. That's the new hottest programming language. I think Andrej Karpathy quoted that. Yes. What does that look like exactly? Well, we don't know exactly how the interface is. It's some kind of plain English, where the human role is still very important, because the thing that we all humans, I think, will do in the future is not to produce business value by thinking, but produce business value by expressing what we like. And there needs to be some kind of interface where AI is the biggest part of carrying out the work, but humans explain, oh, this I want it more like this, so this is what I like.
I mean, I think one point that you could have wanted to prove is simply that AI can do something, like from an AI point of view. But you could also take in the point in, I as an engineer, software engineer, think it takes too much time. I want my work to be more efficient, and that could be another way to use AI. Or thirdly, it could be simply that I know a lot of people that can program, and I want to enable them and democratize in some way the ability to build software.
It's the last one there,
Okay, it's the last one that you...
So the interface is plain English. Anyone can build products, and when something is frustrating you, using your bank interface, or something is frustrating you, booking flight tickets, then you can go in and say, like, change this, and then maybe someone has to approve it, but like that's the future we're heading towards. And building that interface is a very fun, very kind of multi-dimensional challenge of understanding what are the possibilities, how can you express this? Is it just a chat GPT interface? No, it's not. It's much more than that.
And I really would encourage anyone that don't believe it is possible to simply go to the GPT Engineer and try it out. You can get started in a few minutes, and you have your first app in a few more minutes, more or less. And it is literally that easy. You would easily do it as well, Henrik, and it's surprisingly efficient, right?
Yeah, we made it in such a way. Most companies have this, like, oh, do you need to sign up? Who are you? And so on. You can just go in and write what you want, and then it's free to get the free for the first few.
The credits run out too quickly, I think. That's
it actually cost us a lot of money with all the usage, with the free usage right now. It cost a lot of money.
But having a free tier, I think, is an awesome thing still. So you can.
But it's also a way to, don't take my word for it. Try it. That's a cool value proposition in itself, I think. That's the way to do it. I had another, let's, that whole thing we are talking about now, there is another argument here. I want to try that on you. I mean, so I had a conversation with someone to say, you know what, in order to do good prompting, in order to have a good human-machine interaction, the way we are working with an LLM today, that the most people have experienced with ChatGPT and everything, actually understanding the fundamentals of programming or how systems work improves your ability to prompt. So I'm thinking a little bit like, okay, the vision is here is like, you don't need to know any programming. Yes, not in code, but mentally understanding how systems works and how you talk to a machine, so to speak. I think that is a skill in itself. That actually we need to be competent in programming, but we will work on a different abstraction layer. Yep. What do you think about that?
You might not want to get me started on this, because I'll just keep talking. But the vision is very simple. There is like this perfect interface where everything you say just magically happens in a few seconds. But the path there does require humans in the loop a lot. And how we see it right now is anyone can build the concepts. My designer friends who reached out to me, they're like, I measured something I did in Figma, and I get exactly the same here 20 times faster, literally 20 times faster. And that person can take it to an interactive website or product, but they cannot take it all the way to having it connected to like OpenAI, databases, authentication, at least that easily as someone who is technical, who understands the concepts and can prompt it in the right way. So there is still a big interplay here. And I think where you get the most benefit currently is by being in this tool for teams.
Yeah.
To work together, show each other what they want to build.
Tools for teams was maybe there is within the team there is some programming competence.
Exactly.
But you don't need 10 of them. You need one.
Yeah.
One example, right?
Exactly. No, so everyone can move as fast as the programmer pretty much, and then you have someone that can jump in and edit the code themselves even if they need to.
Awesome. So you built this open source project, GPT Engineer, and at some point you chose to start also the company called Lovable. And I'd love to hear more about the name Lovable as well. But can you just walk us through a bit, why did you make the decision to create a company called Lovable?
So there's this meme almost in building companies, and you said it right before this, Henrik. Like you can build minimum viable product. People talked a lot about that, but the thing that actually is necessary these days to show product market fit or something is a minimum lovable product. And that's what our AI system is set out to do.
And it was actually part, I didn't know that. I know the terms, I was just throwing it out there, but it was actually part of the thinking when you choose the name Lovable.
So I'm looking for examples of Slack, for example, is a tool that people use, and it's actually a pleasure to use. It's like well built. It has all these nice keyboard shortcuts, and people who have it, they're like, and they start a new company. They're like, we don't have Slack. I really want it because it's a really nice product. And most software is not like that. I think now more and more software is becoming like that. And the reason is that it has been very costly to hire not just like the 1% of people that can code, but the top 1% of designers together with excellent front-end system engineers. And now AI is going to be able to do this by us as engineers in the team who have built a lot of great products, encoding our best practices into the AI system.
This is the new bar. This is the new norm. Lovable. I think. I think that's where you need to be at to have market fit.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you have a smart thing that works, and if it's a shitty experience, it's not going to take off. I don't think so.
Yeah, no, these days. I fully agree.
These days.
I fully agree.
And congrats on also receiving a big funding round now. I think you were number 1 in Sweden in October or something.
Oh, thanks.
For getting, was it 7.5 million USD or something?
Yeah, great.
Congrats on that. And if you were to just, a lot of companies and people want to have the journey that you're having right now, can you give some tips? How do you actually build the interest? How do you capture the investors? How do you get these kind of funding rounds?
Yeah, so on the investor side, there are many, I think, different paths you can go with regards to, having a strong team, doing a marketing stunt. What's that?
Is a team more important than a product, you think, or what's the most important?
Yeah, I think definitely, like, if I'm an investor, the team is the 100% the most important thing.
Yeah. Because you're still pre-seed. It's not a seeding round. It's still a...
It's very early. When we raised this, we had a prototype pretty much. But the thing that's most reliable here, I would say, is to sit down and really, really obsess about solving initially a very, very small but annoying problem, like a problem that people your customers actually care about. And that often takes you both time to understand what that problem is and if you can find the solution to it, and to make the solution lovable, so to say, or at least work on it so many times so that it's not just buggy and annoying for the users. And if you can do that, then if you obsess about that and work on that every day for a few months or a few years, then you will have something good, and then investors will be very impressed.
But what you're saying is simple but fairly profound. Having the right profile team of people working on a problem that is super simple and clear. Someone who I admire, who is a professor in marketing and branding, said, "Henrik, you have a great idea here. It could potentially grow, but it can never scale because it's not sharp enough. It's not clear enough. So that sort of sharpness in product problem, or whatever you want to say, I think those two things you mentioned now, I think that's kind of a secret sauce in here. The team with a very, very sharp problem that the investor can get. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to build a business. The investors sometimes care a lot about the scale here. I think that is less important if you first start with a very small problem that you can solve really well, you can make money on it, and you can build a team around that works really productively on that. Then you can always, or if there's at least a clear path, you can expand the scope.
Okay, but then it's a trifecta, right? It's the team, it's the very articulate problem sharply defined, and it's the vast scaling opportunity around it if it's done well. Yeah, I guess that's a trifecta then.
Yeah, totally.
But it seems when I look at a bit of your communication on LinkedIn, etc., I mean, you do speak a lot of the team, and that you want to build or have the best people around, and already have in some way, I guess. And at least for me, also in the investor in early stages kind of phase, that certainly is the most important one, I think, as well. Then you have to have a clear idea, but the products will probably change a lot during the path, and you must be open to that, right?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is who the people are, and the second most important thing can be the most important thing is how you work together, and if you can have this super fast propagation of ideas and selecting the best ideas and learning together from the external world.
And I guess in your case, it's also a bit of easier for you because you have a proven track record as well, and then of course it's always easier, I guess, as well. So finding someone that actually have some kind of experience, I guess, is a good idea as well if someone is interested in having a similar path, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a cheat code to have the track.
I can just share, when it's like 15, 20 years ago, I worked with the Price Runner founders. They just sold Price Runner, and they're going to launch this other new second generation shopping site. They got money without showing any line of code at all. And they got a lot of money. They just said, this is our idea, give us money, and they got money. And then they sat down, okay, what should we do now?
But that must be also telling of the times. I think that kind of experience can shift over the cycles. Must do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in that case, it was extreme, I think. But they had a really good track record.
But they had the track record, of course. But I wanted to flip it. What were you looking for when you were looking for funding, in terms of what would be the ideal VC for you, or how were you thinking about the matchmaking with the right partners? Business angels, VC, different ways of think here. So how were you thinking about what capital would be the best fit?
So on this topic, now in the topic of fundraising, I think there is a book that is 70 pages long by a prominent, very no bullshit, very to the point startup founder themselves. And this Ryan Breslow, he talks a lot about pick a VC where you feel a good connection to the people that you will be working with together and collaborating with, and where you want to have that relationship. And there are two funds that I knew from before where I had that connection.
So was it more of a BA style, business angel style with fewer, or was it like a portfolio? Or was it a VC
there is a lot of we have a cap table with quite a lot of helpful angels from cool institutions and so on. But there's also VC funds, and that was my biggest criterion, and the second thing I thought a lot about was, okay, so if we're built a $1 trillion company, or like we have, then there's a lot of responsibility for the company on how you act in the world to do to have a positive impact. And then I interviewed the VCs about how would you look if we come to a hard decision, profit, like some.
So you turned the discussion around a bit, because otherwise you have another kind of situation where the VC interviews you, but you actually ask them instead of.
I did that, yeah.
That's a nice.
But maybe that's a nice position to be. Yeah, but because sometimes we forget that, you know what, it takes two to tango, and sometimes, you know, like if it's not for everyone to be able to pick and choose their money, you know. But even if you can't pick and choose your money, I think it's good advice. You should interview and find a fit and understand how will this partnership work if this happens. You know, I think that's a brilliant advice.
Mm. Could we go a bit technical?
Yes.
Now let's go.
So I think everyone knows ChatGPT, Claude, and so many other, you know, Gemini, etc., that can code rather well, or very well, I would say. And you can ask them for help. But there are, you know, things they can't do. And can you just perhaps start by explaining a bit what is different with GPT Engineer and traditional like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, and these kind of services?
Yeah, so sure. So if you're building a software product, there are a list of like best practices that you can come with, and you can be quite opinionated and say, okay, this is how we're going to do things. We're not going to do all these things we could be doing. And the strength of our system is that it does a lot of that. You can always take it over and do whatever you want with it, unlike this more like old school no-code tools, which is a strength. But it's opinionated, which makes it much easier for us to continuously fine-tune our system to work extremely well in those circumstances. And
so you add like a bias to it in some way in the beginning? Yeah. So you guide the user in this is the proper way to set up the system.
So we are talking about design pattern bias, or what do you mean with bias in this sense? We're not misinterpreting what you're talking about.
These large language models, they're very powerful. They are sometimes, you feel like they're very stupid. Or they are at least not reliably smart. They sometimes wow, but they often run into doing stupid things. And for each of the normal hard problems, we can look at them, diagnose them, and see how do we make the AI system know how to do this problem. And that's something we're doing, which the like YLS, ChatGPT, Claude, there's an AI editor called Cursor. It can not assume those, like all of these specifics in how things should be done, because it has to work with any existing code that could be with C++, any low level things, and that makes the problem very different.
But is that a little bit like what we were talking about? I was referring to the topic that you will come further with prompting ChatGPT if you're a good programmer. And here we have the same topic that, okay, if in order to make this work for someone who's not a programmer, we are opinionated programmers who really well understands how to program a large language model. So therefore, when you do this, we will steer that into these patterns.
Correct. Yeah, so a really good programmer can prompt it better, and we have a part of what we do really well is that we have looked, we continuously look every time something goes wrong. How could we have helped it and be a middle layer there in what the user said something very stupid.
So a user communicates in a certain way,
yes, and then we translate.
And a programmer would communicate to the same LLM in a different way.
Correct. Yes.
This is part of the magic sauce here.
Exactly. We remove that
the gap.
The gap, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Can you just give us some example? What are the biases or opinionated kind of thinking that you add to the system?
So I'm trying to not go too technical,
Don't be afraid to be technical.
Go
Yes.
technical,
Okay,
but don't
so-
reveal your secret sauce.
Okay, so
Oh, please do reveal your secret sauce.
so what has been very time consuming is to create a very beautiful user interface that is interactive, and where you click a button, it's like it opens a box and then it adds some records in a way that is bug free. And that problem we have reliably solved, which is like a huge unlock. Like this front-end engineering is a hard problem. Now this is solved for new applications. So for new applications, we have solved that.
And you have like a React-based or biased, for example?
Yeah,
or?
exactly. So
Yes.
how do you do that? Well, there's a lot of different choices of front-end framework. There are new front-end frameworks every day, and the LLMs are very good with React. So when our users know React, so that we've chosen like always build React, always use TypeScript, always try to use something called a component library of beautiful looking widgets and buttons and so on, and specifically compose them in these different ways. And then this we have reliably solved. What is the next unlock is to having this user interface communicate with a system that persists your data and keeps track of which users exist and if you can log in and so on. That is more difficult. And there are the same type of guardrails and assumptions we can make. So if you need to create this, so we tell the AI, if you need to create a system for logging in, then we can do it then always do it in this way. If you're calling in external API endpoints, if you're calling OpenAI, if the user is in the built application and wants to call OpenAI, then you have to do it in this certain way to make it a great user experience.
So it works really well with front ends. How well does it work for back ends, you would say today?
Yeah, so the scope is for like what we aim to cover 80% of the applications, and if you find out that you are not in this 80% sometime down the line, you can always edit the code yourself in whatever editor you prefer. And that 80%, as we see it, it's authentication, logging in and managing users. It's storing data, any type of data in a database for the specific user, or like if you want to build Twitter, you won't have to store the posts and so on. And then it's like backend endpoints that let you call something external if you are logged in and so on. So if you want to build an AI app, then you always need to add some backend functionality for the AI parts. And that means you can build all the types of like quite simple SaaS products. The core functionality of SaaS products like HR management tools, inventory management if you're like running a business, customer portals, visualization dashboards. Those you can reliably build. Once you add you have 10, 20 different features, like it get complex, then it will be a frustrating experience because then the system is still a bit.
But you can build some backend with some APIs and some databases.
Yeah,
or
all of that.
Yes.
Awesome. For someone, and I think this is a bigger gap than we realize. If I'm gonna, I want to do a startup like yours, build a GPT engineer, and I'm used to maybe old school. I understand the modern data stack that we have in our large enterprises, but I have a really hard time imagining. What is your technology stack? What is your software and protocols? Or, what are the fundamental building blocks? That sort of you build GPT engineers a tool on. Are we going to do Kubernetes over here? We're going to do this over here. What is the fundamental technology stack, or how are you thinking about that to build the product GPT engineer? That is your programmers' daily work.
There's a fun technical topic here, but it's ideal if our product builds itself, right? There's a way to edit itself. And with regards to the front end, we can do that. I can open GPT Engineer and I can edit itself, which is pretty fun. But with regards to the backend system,
you can use your own product to build your own front end.
Yes, but the backend systems are actually for us complex. We spin up a separate server, micro VM for each user, and it does not edit any of that. And so
this whole orchestration, everything like that, you just pick apart a little bit like the core technology components in order to build a system, like a compound AI system like this. Without going into details, but just understanding the technology.
So you're saying how we build our product?
Yeah,
exactly. So now it's complex, but when we started out, it is just using the same technology that I've described, React, adding a simple backend, which our AI can do, and as a point here to explain, like, okay, could you build our tool with itself? Is it the same components? There was actually a user last week that built a visually perfect copy of our product. And so
only visually, not functionality?
It had all the core, or they had the core flow perfectly functioning. You ask for
cool.
But that's
UI.
a meta. That's a meta. Very meta.
So yeah. And that product was, I would say, beautiful because the UI was similar, but it was definitely not lovable, which again, like, takes a lot of iterations and smartness in terms of the AI to make it really, really good. Cool. It was called likable. That's what he called it.
Okay, I'm going to try to drill further and see how much you can actually speak about the secret sauce you're doing. But I guess, in your case, it quickly builds up with a number of files you have in the repo, so to speak, that you're building up. And at some point, you have some limitation in context windows, etc., or you need to in some way prompt and talk to the LLM in different ways. Can you just elaborate? How do you handle, multiple files in different ways and make it understand that now it needs to add a new file, or now it needs to change something in a specific file? How do you actually build up that kind of prompting and discussion with the LLM?
Yeah, so I'll go on a quick detour. Like, how we did this before was that we had this very complex agent system, and people talk a lot about this. It was also, we were like, okay, so Devin demo launched, and we're like, okay, maybe they're onto something here. This looks really cool. And we also built something that was extremely cool, where it had all of these different steps, agents talking to each other and so on. But it had a lower accuracy. It usually failed more often. And much worse than failing more often is that when it failed, the user didn't understand at all what was going on. Like, no idea, impossible to understand what was going on. And it was much slower. So you wait for minutes, and then something fails. You're like, I'm out of here. This is not a good user experience. So our focus is like the opposite now, to make it as fast and as simple for the user to understand what's going on as possible. But then it becomes much easier to learn the limitations and understand, okay, these things are really fast, these things work really well. When I get to this stage, like I have 20 different features in my product, then I onboard my engineering team into this first version that I built out in minutes. And how does it work now then?
Yeah.
Okay, so as the focus is on speed. So we have like extremely fast large language models.
Can you say which one you're using? Or?
So for the fast ones, we usually use OpenAI's smaller model, which is very good.
And 4 Mini? Or?
Yeah, exactly. 4 Mini. And that does a few, like we call it hydrating, like a main larger prompt. And when we're done with that, we send that over to Anthropic's medium-sized model, which is very, very good.
Sonnet, 3.5 now, I guess.
Yes.
This is the interesting stuff here. This is a compound AI system, and this language model over here is another one over here. I mean, like this whole orchestra. I think this is what people don't get.
Why do you mix the two? Can't you simply use Sonnet all the way? Was it just because of pricing?
The speed.
But again, what is it, the fast one? Haiku or something?
Yeah. So Haiku is not as fast and not as cheap also. As again, there's large costs to this now when we have a lot of usage.
Even with they released a new version just a week
ago.
Yeah,
that's something. The one we benchmarked, right? So when it came out.
Still cheaper with Mini? Or?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So if we would, now I'm going technical, like if we would use Haiku, which we are running currently an A/B test with, like split testing and seeing what's the performance in actually, first we do it offline, but then we also check what does it actually look like with real users. then we would not switch out the small OpenAI models to Haiku, but we would switch out the big Sonnet model to Haiku. Because speed is so important, and for the simple requests, Haiku will do an almost as good job, or as good.
I saw something about the latest Haiku version, which is the smallest of the 3 that Claude AI has, was beating the Opus, which is a super big one that they had in version 3. Those 3.5 Haiku, I think, was better than 3.0 Opus or something. I think. It's insane how fast the evolution of models go.
I mean, I would always take this with a grain of salt, though. Like the big models have more like some kind of general intelligence and reasoning about things that are like it's not in its training data. That's usually what people say. While as the small models can get extremely good at these things that it has been optimized for.
Still, if we just go back to what we spoke about, you have a large number of files. The total number of lines grow quickly. How do you prompt the models?
How do you prompt it? Yes, this is very important things to get right. I said before I can go into technical details here, and I will try to do that. The best way to prompt the models is to start extremely simple and see where it fails, and then try not to make the prompts more complex, but oftentimes you have to, and then that's a big part of why our system works well as well. We have gone through that iteration of okay, let's make it more complex. Does it solve this edge cases that we had before? Yes. Did it introduce some problems with the old types of tasks? No, actually, it's fine. Let's roll this out.
But do you mean you try it out yourselves manually and see what works, or do you mean it actually, when people are using it, it starts in some way and then automatically fallbacks to different solutions?
So if we have a problem we need to become better at this. Let's change the prompt. Let's try it once manually. Okay, looks good. Then instantly we start this back test of seeing how would this have performed.
I have a big back testing library as well.
And that this loop of is how we do prompting. So to say, how to prompt them better and better.
So a large part of the work and coding is prompting in this sense. Talking to the LLMs and see how they actually react and make it work.
And I'm going to try a third time here as well. So how do you do the prompting? I know
what says in the prompt, what the prompts say. Yeah, okay, exactly. So the prompts say, you are an expert software engineer. I don't think we need that anymore, but that was actually useful in the past. And just explain the full context, because if you are how do you say this? From an LLM's perspective, they have never seen this product before, so you need to explain a bit context. Like the user is going to ask you a question to change a code base, and you should reply in these different ways. And here are the few, depending on what the user says, you should change the code, answer a question, or take an action.
But do you say look at these files specifically for that prompt, or how do you select what to look at?
So selecting the files is done by LLMs as well as one of the early steps.
So it's a multi-step process still to first know what files to look at, or if you should create new files, I guess, or
no. So we need to provide, like I said, hydrating the prompt. What does that mean? Well, it means pulling in all the most important information. You could just put before we put all the code, since it's quite small projects for us. We usually before we put all the code in there and all the information that's relevant. It turns out that is slower, more costly, but mainly it deteriorates performance. It becomes more stupid when it has to look at many things. So that's why we do a intelligent selection on what is necessary as input, and then as for which action to take, that's up to the main prompt that is also optimized for being fast. That does all of that.
I'm starting to understand a bit more, at least. It's good that you speak a bit more about the internals.
But and I think this is.
I can just say that this is. I probably quite generalized for others building large language model applications. I think this is a pretty good framework to make it super fast and have one large LLM call initially, and then have some kind of super fast LLMs on top of that, maybe before. Some we also do some super fast ones afterwards.
And my point, what I was trying to get to, and I think we're getting there by listening and talking to you, is that even if you're a very experienced software engineer and you've been working, building systems for years in React, whatever, you need to wrap your head around how do you code or how do you build a system now? You're going to build a platform and you're going to do some normal stuff where the core is an LLM and you're actually working through the LLM. So it's a different workflow. Yep. I'm trying to unveil what's the difference in workflow if you want to build a startup that is fundamentally with an LLM at the center. This is a different software workflow, I think, that you're describing. It makes sense, but for someone who has never tried it, it's a different workflow. Am I right? Or how did you sort of, did you evolve in terms of how you understand your programming and all that? Or is it the same?
So yes and no. I mean, it's how to use the LLMs to their full potential is a completely new thing, and there is no academic discipline or profession around this. But I think it's just one new piece of software engineering. It's like software engineering discipline has dozens of different things you have to learn, like all the front and back end testing, databases, like all of these things. And this is a new one. And some people talk about no, now everything should be an agent. And as I explained, I don't believe that's how you should think about things. You should think about, you have a user that has a problem. You have to solve the problem for the user. Write as much code, as little LLM as possible. If that doesn't cut it, you have to add some more AI things on there and add as little AI as possible. Make it work. And if then maybe add more and more chains, which makes it start resembling an agent, but try to avoid it. That's how I see it, actually.
I love to at some point later go into these kind of different levels of AGI that OpenAI spoke about, etc., and see what the future will hold. But I think we should not go there now, because then we get stuck there and never get back to GPT Engineer. So
no comments.
I know
you're right.
Perhaps you can just mention. You mentioned a couple of challenges that you had, when building GPT Engineer, and you tried out, a more agent-oriented framework, and then you went back to a bit more simple approach. Okay, what have the major challenges been, or surprises perhaps? When starting off from the first open source version to actually having something now that you will have a big launch for in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
So the big challenge is to reliably let users get to the point where they get business value before they run into this confused AI system. And we have many people comparing different AI software engineers, or aspiring AI software engineers. And I just want to point out that in those comparisons, I have only seen our tool come out on top now.
Really?
Interesting.
Yes. And I've challenged people as I'm saying, if it's someone I respect, I'm going to pay you $1,000 if you show that our tool is not the best.
Oof.
Ooh,
that's a bold statement.
I like it.
And this is a very exciting times because of this, obviously. But that's the big challenge that we run into, making it reliably let users achieve what they want.
And what does that boil down to technically? Do you need to work on?
Well, as I said, there's all the difficult normal software engineering things you have to solve for, which usually take a lot of time. We have to do it super fast, and we have spent a lot of time there. But I mean, it's mainly this iterative process. Where does it get confused? How can we avoid that without reducing performance somewhere else? And the way to solve it is to have a great team that can move really fast and solve all the problems and come up with really smart ideas on how to solve them.
Mm-hmm. And I guess be agile in that way and actually change the way and don't be afraid to change the plan.
Yeah, that's one of our company values. Have a pirate approach where you're prepared to throw away everything all these great ideas approach. If you find a better.
I love it. Have you? I need a T-shirt.
Yes, that's
we've been collecting T-shirts quotes for 4 years.
John
be
Bosch,
a pirate or have a pirate approach. I love that T-shirt.
John Bosch is a professor in Chalmers, and he speaks about going from agile to radical. I think it would be awesome to say go from agile to pirate approach.
Yeah, pirate approach. Forget about radical. I want to be pirate. It's much cooler. But what is a pirate approach then? Or because this is the thing. Are you using that? Jokingly, of course. But what does that mean?
Yeah, but for
I love
example,
it.
just like, okay, we tried this complex system, which was really good. Like it pushed the limits of what you can do with multi-agents and so on. And then we're like, no, this is not the right one. This is faster for us to build, much faster for the user. That's one example.
So pirate approach is about daring to,
question yourself.
Dump the shit. There is no sunk cost. Dump the shit that doesn't work, and think like a pirate. How would a pirate solve it?
I mean, yeah. I have a good friend who's leading work at this one of these LLM labs, and he says like, when we built AlphaFold, for example, there was all of these smart physicists and scientists coming in and be like, okay, I'm joining now.
I can guess who you're speaking about, but okay, good.
we can apply first principles thinking and use more equations and physics and math here. And they all got burnt on that. Yeah. The thing that like the pragmatic people always win out on is to say, hey, we have the system. Why is it not working? Okay, we seem to have it does this mistake, it does those mistakes. How do we fix those mistakes? And just solve them, and then find the next bottleneck. Keep doing that. I think
you have a physicist background as well, so it must feel a bit strange to say.
Yeah, it's true.
Does it hurt your mentality?
So physics is a lot about first principle thinking, breaking down like what are the governing principles here. And I think finding the bottlenecks and fixing the bottleneck is the right principle here.
So it is a type of first principle as well, I guess.
But it's a joke here because Elon Musk is the guy who is the biggest pirate talking about first principles. Yeah. So living both ends and figuring out first principle from a pirate point of view.
I guess now I'm going a bit meta here, but I guess there are people who think a lot about like these governing equations, like how the world works, often get stuck in those. But the reality is that every model is like useful in some domain, and the right way to do it is to not use your models too much, but find, is there a new model to be applied here and solve the problem, which Elon Musk definitely does now. Now he comes into winning the US elections, and he has all of this first principle thinking that he never knew before, but he just found out of how to win an election. I think that's
giving away $1 million every day could be one.
A great example. Like he goes around and tells people the only thing that matters is that you actually go vote. He doesn't say anything else. Yeah. Like that's probably quite smart as well.
Yes,
but back to our story. I was building up a curiosity in my head when we were talking about the different models you tried, or you have a multi-model. I mean, like Claude.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Have you tested or have you experimented with any open source approaches, or have you had that open source thinking in your company? Okay, we need to, when we scale beyond this point, we can't afford to do it. We need to go.
Also, there are many open source has a lot of meanings. Like I did the GPT Engineer original version, which is now like quite old.
That was an open source project, right?
Yeah, it's not our product. Exactly. I'm thinking, should we do open source for our product itself?
Llama or?
And so our code base would be open source. And part of me is a bit sad that we haven't done that yet. At least we might do that.
But I was more
that
thinking,
was not the question.
The question was actually
open weights models.
The question was, what is supposedly in the category of open source LLMs like Llama versus.
Can we call them open weight?
Yeah. Actually, thank you very much.
Because
they're not open.
The source for them is actually hidden, and you don't even know what the source for them.
Thank you. We had this conversation that they are not open. None is open. Open weight. Let's call them open weight.
Yeah. So we have tried those models. They actually have one big advantage, which is that some hardware providers run them on a very efficient or like specialized hardware. So we tried using them, but what we find is that it's very important with this like out of the distribution common sense, almost like IQ points for the models, which OpenAI and Anthropic are world leaders in. While as the open source models are like they are good at specific set of coding problems, but not as general. I'm quite confident we will optimize speed by using open source models in at least some cases, depending on what the user asks for in the future.
So when you're actually starting to build and this is scaling, you decompose this and you could quite possibly have open source in this particular problem or feature, whilst this is, so it's a mix. It's going to be a mix.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in short, you're saying that open weight LLMs are inferior compared to the closed source proprietary.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. I think, I mean, the bottlenecks are different things. Now the bottleneck is, to a large extent, how intelligent the large language models are. That will be less of a bottleneck in the future. And then the open source models will quite easily catch up.
Open weight.
But and have you sort of done the calculation or break off points, cost wise, that this will never scale in a proprietary model, with a token price like this. We need to go open source. Is that a factor in this game?
No. If you compare to a human's time, I think you want currently to max out on the intelligence.
Okay.
Weighing in. So the speed and the intelligence is what you want to max out on. In the future, you will want to start optimize for costs more. But like as an example, I've tried this Devin, which is closed access now. The reason is that it is not reliable. You don't reliably get what you're asking for, so they haven't released that. But they do go to the enterprises, and maybe they find some cases where it's worth the time of the user, even though it's not reliable. It's worth the time, and then they charge $10,000 per month.
Really,
which is a lot of money, and that says something about like worrying about cost is a bit premature.
I would really want to go into the business model that you have, but before we close the topic of open weight LLMs and closed weight frontier models, what do you think will happen in the future? We have had the discussion a number of times, and it's just interesting to think either the gap between the two will increase, and you will have the few extreme large frontier and extreme intelligent models, or you can think also that open weight models start to catch up. What do you think will happen in coming years?
No, I think we're kind of now seeing diminishing return on the IQ points in a way. OpenAI launched their reasoning engine O1, and it hasn't had a big impact at all.
You don't think so?
It has not.
I think O2, O3 will be a big improvement.
So the reason it doesn't have a big impact is like you can look at the benchmark, the delta, and it's exceptional at things where you have to do reasoning, like so physics and math and things like that. How often do you need that? Not that often, actually. So and it's much slower. I don't know how expensive it is. It's less kind of predictable when in how you use it. And this is like I think the first signals that the new more IQ points is at least this type of IQ points are not that valuable, and you can just if you do what we are doing, you move really fast and you create this system that like solves a user problem. Like I want to create a product and you iterate on it, then you can get very far with today's like level of intelligence. And at some point, we're going to care more about that it's being open source, that we can do more optimizations, which we can. I'm very sad that we cannot do the open weight is what I meant there. We cannot do the optimizations you can do when you run the model yourself. And the IQ points, you might pick like less intelligent models than.
So this is a rabbit hole. Sorry, I have to go here.
Go ahead, please.
But first, before I go into the rabbit hole, I'd just like to ask: are you using like fine-tuning APIs for OpenAI or something, or are you using them as is?
I'm teasing a bit on the technical breakthrough here is that we find a way to teach the models without fine tuning.
Okay.
We have done some fine tuning, but now it's not a part of our the core flow of the core flow.
Let me then go back to O1 and the future of the frontier models a bit, and think a bit, further down the line, a couple of years ahead. I would like to disagree with you a bit here. That's why I'm trying to open up a conflict here, so I have some kind of disagreement, even though who knows, what will happen. But if we just think like, let's just go transformers, let's use the GPT decoder and see how far we get with more parameters and better data for training it, and perhaps some fine-tuning RL, HF or something to continue to train it, but not really change the architecture, perhaps not really change what O1 potentially is doing with STAR approach, with the self-taught reasoner and some kind of reinforcement learning that is adding some kind of different type of training at least, and different type of reasoning or inference that they have. You don't think that actually adding this kind of extra logic, if you call it that, in how you train it and use inferencing could potentially make it much more efficient? And
yes,
perhaps
that is going to be a big thing as well. The models will be fast and cheap if it's a simple query. But okay, so the question is, all of the new things that are coming out now, aren't they going to make them much more powerful soon?
Yes. And also potentially more efficient. I mean,
I used to think this. I very strongly had this strong belief.
Yes.
And the thing is that there are thousands of extremely smart people that are trying to push the state of the art, and still O1 comes out and it doesn't have
a number of benchmark, but it completely overshadows everything else, though. So I mean, it was many benchmarks, but it completely, overshine other models. So for more reasoning-related tasks, it is still outperforming in extreme, right?
I guess where we might disagree somehow is that I think the current level of the models is like the biggest impact, which I kind of think in terms of like, okay, what are we going to see in the world, so to say, comes from operationalizing the models we have. And then the level up in the models becoming better is like also large. Like the models are going to be much better, but it is like in maybe the same order of magnitude as just like using the models to their full potential.
But let me challenge it in this way, because you actually add manually a number of steps here. You have a large language model first, or larger than the second one that you use to try to get some kind of idea how to approach the problem. So basically, I would say you do some planning in the beginning, and then you have a second step where you do the actions or changes in the code in some way. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, correct.
And imagine if then we have models that, like O1, which potentially sometimes when it's a simple problem, I just give the answer directly. Some other times it needs to take a number of steps and actually reason with itself to come up with what the best solution would be. Do you know the JEPA from Jan LeCun's kind of idea? Have you?
I don't think I've read much lately. Okay. Please, do you want to explain? I think it would be great to hear.
It takes a long time. Sorry for this rabbit hole, Henrik, but
he loved that you made that comment, by the way. So please go.
JEPA is called the Joint Embedding Predictive Architecture. It's something Jan LeCun, he doesn't like the autoregressive kind of objective that we have. Just predicting the next token is perhaps not the most efficient way to train things, even though it's surprisingly efficient in just scaling up the number of parameters and data.
I used to think he was a bit crazy on like not believing in the scaling laws, but he's growing on me in this regard. You need something new. Yeah,
he's going up and down, I can tell you. He has a big feud with Elon as well, which is interesting. Anyway, one way of thinking there is that you would like to have, as human, thinking fast and thinking slow kind of approach for some tasks, and I would say that most LLMs today are basically doing thinking fast.
100%.
And you would at some point say that this is too hard of a problem. I need to do the frontal cortex kind of conscious kind of reasoning where you, in your symbolic space, in your head, is thinking a number of steps ahead, and it's really slow. I mean, it can take seconds and even more, or even minutes or hours. And for some tasks, that's necessary. And then either you can do what you do now, which is basically manually adding these steps, saying, first do this planning, then do that. And it's hard-coded.
Yeah.
Or you can have the model trained to do it itself.
Mm.
Wouldn't that be a big step forward?
Yes, it will be a big step forward. There's a question of how fast we get there. We will get there. We will get there. And it will be much less code. It will be much more just the LLM, right?
So this is philosophical, of course. And then JEPA also had this kind of hierarchical JEPA thing. So hierarchical means that for some tasks it's super fast and it's super easy. You just need to add this token. Yeah. Next step could be add this sentence. A step above could be think about how to drive a car or whatnot. So having this kind of hierarchical thinking, I think you added it manually now. So you have an higher abstraction layer where you do some planning, then you have a lower action layer where you take a number of steps. So if that's being done and trained in an automatic way, and you don't have to manually add how you go about doing the more abstract planning, that potentially could be useful.
We will have higher reliability in less mistakes from the AI. I'm scratching my head here because there's so when you dig into a problem, you also often find these dimensions you did not think about, and I'll name a few in our domain, for example, that are still maybe more important than how good the LLM answers, and they have to do with basically how do you interface with the human here? What is it? How do you make sure you understood the human correctly? This is the more important problem almost. And how does the AI system, so to say, confirm that it did the right thing? For our system, the AI quite often spits out code that is wrong. Yeah. Less often than when I write code. It's usually much more. And what I do when I write code is that I run the code and I check if it works, and then I look at the debug and I step through the code. And those are the things that can have a bigger impact, which is a bit crazy. I would say that I didn't say this before. Wouldn't say this a few months ago, but bigger impact than having better large language models and more intelligence in the large language models. But it will be a big change as well.
I think what you're doing is exactly right. What we have, what type of models today, so you need to basically have the higher abstraction layer manually encoded today and probably for some time forward. But who knows what will happen.
Yeah, actually, how long time is it going to take? Do you have a prediction?
No. Or yes, but
there is a large topic and rabbit hole here. Maybe we can fall into it now. And this is... go deeper on understanding the word agent, agentic, agency, because you quite clearly debunked that to have agentic workflows in over complex ways in LLMs is not necessarily always the best thing. And I've been going on a path actually before agentic became a really big thing to understand agent-based modeling of organizations or enterprise.
Okay.
So we are talking about more fundamental stuff, agency. And I think one of the key things, the problem you are solving or you're working on, which is your number one problem to solve to be lovable, is that you're ending up with the principal-agent relation between the system and the worker.
The principal agent.
So there's a lot of theory. Before someone stole agentic and put that into the AI research community, there's been 50 years of research on what is called the principal agent problem or relationship. So basically, how do we organize companies? How do we organize our relationships between a boss and their coworkers? Right. And the core thing we are talking about now is that we get to a human-machine interface where you need to treat the machine as a coworker almost more than a system. So what I'm saying is that when you're starting to interact with it, in natural language and want to get stuff done in a team, and one of the teams is a software GPT engineer, it's a coworker experience you are almost needing to solve, because you need to communicate to the machine, and that needs to understand, so that whole interface you're working on.
But is that the point with an agent system? And it's not really a human-machine interface. It's really the machine-to-machine interface, isn't it?
No, but the core topic now is that if you go deep down, forget about AI and forget about agentic workflows in LLMs. But if you go down into the sort of papers and work that has been done for 50 years on what we understand of agent-based modeling, what we understand with the word agency. Yeah. So we are handing over agency from the human to the machine to not only to do things for us in more and more advanced approaches.
I mean, can I just intersect here? Like we have had this software revolution for a few decades. Where we tap a keyboard and then things happen.
Yeah.
I would say, with your definition, that it sounds like that is handing over agency to the software.
I wouldn't agree so.
Why not?
Because but we are going from one narrow task to more complex problems.
But I don't see that will be a change of definitions. Everything will be a narrow task in the future. No?
Yes, but I think...
Is there anything that's not a narrow task? That's an example.
The interaction level between the machine and the human is not on the narrow task anymore. So when you are prompting someone to build a system for you, you're prompting you're prompting, or you're.
But I think this is it's a spectrum, and we can't really say it's agentic or not. I mean, I gave a course in agent-oriented software engineering like 20 years ago.
It's nothing new.
So, but you can see a difference between object-oriented systems and agent-oriented systems, for example, where the level of agency, or rather the level of how autonomous they are, and you don't organize the system in terms of objects that you have in a more abstract sense, but rather, and the attributes they have, it's rather about minimizing the interaction between them so they can operate without having to interact. So you can think of a different way when you use that kind of agent-oriented design, potentially, which is about really, in my view, becoming increasingly autonomous.
Can I restart with my thesis, and then you can dissect that, or you go first?
Because the main point, what I'm trying to get to, is that for me, clearly, when you are prompting someone to build an app for you, and there is a tons of different things in terms of coding being done on a lower task level, abstraction level. For me, you are working on one abstraction level, and you're giving agency to the system to magically get all that done. So to me, that is a way different level of abstraction and detailed task being done.
I learned something new here asking this question. So this is a very useful perspective of where is the interface?
Yes.
Where is the interface? And,
exactly.
Now I can have a more productive conversation. I think another perspective then is an agent, an interface that says that you are an agent here and I'm an agent here, is an organization or a person. They have a need or a problem that they want to solve, and they have to communicate what a good solution looks like to that problem. And then they just want that solved. And if it's software code, if it's LLM involved in the software code, it doesn't matter.
If it's a team of
humans.
Yes.
So the thing is, the worst ways to solve those problems, you should everything else equal in the solution quality and speed, is to have a team of humans, because a team of humans is so complex. While as a piece of a machine, that's what we're talking about, it runs like a machine, is much more preferred by a user or an organization.
And now, so baselining this, you're getting to a much deeper conversation now about what creates emergent intelligent behavior versus not. And if we look at an organization as an organism, so what we happen is, the way we organized organizations, we have created teams, functional division of labor, where you have task machines doing certain things, but they don't have the right mastery for the task they're doing, and they don't have the right feedback loops in relation to understanding if what they're doing in a small sub-optimized silo in an organization is the right or wrong thing. So you get, what is referred to as functional stupidity, and there are papers on this as well. So what we are now seeing when we are seeing how do we create better performant systems, I don't care how you built them, but you've given them agency to be a coder, the mechanisms that we're now thinking about to make this work, they are to a large degree absent in the way we organize organizations. So the scary thing now is that how will we understand agency, artificial, human, organizing, now we take one role, a software engineer. Let's say I want to do that with every single role in Vattenfall. I want to challenge every single role in Vattenfall and not I want to have a GPT software engineer. I want to have a
I
GPT
think we need to
marketing.
Get more concrete.
There is a big topic here, around agency that I think
can we just keep it a bit more simple? I think you actually spoke about.
I can talk a long time here. I can feel that. I want to flesh it out, but yes, go ahead.
Get a bit too far off.
No, we should narrow this down and take it after work.
I mean, I think you phrased it in a good way to start. I mean, we know that we can have a more agentic approach. There's been papers on saying that if we instead have multiple LLMs talking to each other, potentially they are more productive than having a single LLM doing the full task by itself. And perhaps you can even have smaller models and you have a multiple set of steps that they are taking by talking to each other. And that potentially is more efficient. That's been some claims on that. I think it's super interesting that you say that for us, speed is much more important, and we can find a more simple approach, which is actually better in your use case. And I think that's really profound and super interesting. But I can also think, there will be a point potentially where, okay, I'm not sure how far we should get here. We can take I guess the time is going so fast that we should go the OpenAI, AGI kind of level kind of discussion.
Yeah, but because if you take what you're building and you're scaling that up in an enterprise, it has profound implications for how we organize teams and how we design agency around teams in order to put an engineer in that works.
Can I have one last point maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you go to the AGI. So there are two perspectives to look at this. There's there's this human talking to an agent, blah blah. Useful framework, I'm sure, useful. I think if we want to be productive about this implementation and so on, I have a different kind of framework, piece of glasses to look at this on, and it's like the ideal organization company. What that is one human and a huge AI system that the human can give input to. That is the perfect. And then everything else you introduce is going to be suboptimal compared to that, if that works. So it's all just about one human or kind of an organization or one mission for their company being translated into actions through some kind of system, and it could be many humans involved, most likely. But you want to simplify it as much as possible.
I love it. So let me embrace that framework, and then we
are we allowed to?
No, okay, yeah. One second. Yeah, so imagine now we stand here in 2024, and that's I'm going to build this organization that ultimately going to end up here.
Okay.
With your vision. Mm-hmm. How would you organize them here and now? How would you steer this organization of teams and organization that eventually leads that, we can only do 1% of that vision today. Next year, we can do 5% of that vision. Next year, what is the pattern of organizing that allows us to actually, Conway's law, steer ourselves to that vision? This is what I'm trying to get to. I think it's the same, right? Because I'm trying to understand how this could work now and how we need to organize people now.
Yeah, so there's many ways to look at this. Like Conway's laws is super useful theoretical framework sometimes. Yeah. I think the best single framework is to find the bottleneck for what you're trying to do right now and see what's the best solution for that, which might be add a new person. Yeah. Add a new person is going to be the solution many times.
Let's call it the pirate law.
Yeah, so that that's my approach of solving that. But
I think we can get back to your question a bit more. I mean, I think an important question can be simply, what should be the skills that organizations and companies should employ in the future, and what should you as a person choose to educate yourself in when we have AI systems like the Lovable system that can do a lot of the tasks, but still need some kind of skill from a human in some way. So just think about that, and we'll get back to that question soon. Because I think this actually goes to what you just said, the one-person company, the Sam Altman kind of vision. Did you hear Sam Altman saying, they're having bets on which year we will have the first one-person unicorn company?
Yeah, we are creating the tool to enable that.
Yes, I think so.
You are,
right?
You're part of that game.
So I talk about that because
perhaps we will have a 0-person unicorn as well at some point.
We were joking about that.
No.
What is the 0-person?
But you heard about this kind of AI agent that was creating crypto memes?
No.
It made $150,000 so far.
Because
so that's
NFTs. So an AI made memes that I guess was an NFT style.
Correct. Yes. And it had its own bank account or crypto wallet.
It already exists.
Okay, I'd just like to close the topic here, and this was a fun rabbit hole, by the way, going in so many ways. If we just take the question about agentic systems, and I hate the term agentic, by the way, but still. It's been popularized in the last 2-3 years. It's been popularized,
so I've been using it.
But we can still think about system or AI LLMs, we call it that, or AI systems that have some kind of encapsulation. And then you can choose to have a big one that do the whole reasoning, if you call it that, or prediction in that, or it have some kind of internal communication between the different components, and one specialize in, I know how to do planning, I know how to write the TypeScript, I know how to do a backend service. And it could be this kind of mixture of experts kind of thing, where it's actually integrated into one big model, where some part of the model is having different expertise, or you can actually think of it as different agents that potentially is, here is my, database expert. Okay, I have a question about databases. Well, then I go ask this so-called agent, and it could be part of Lovable potentially in the future. Or what do you think? Can it take that direction?
Obviously, we are doing this type of things still. Like I said, we had it more complex before. We're doing this type of things already today. So yes, definitely. Then there is some question that I think you were also asking is like, is this one big neural network, or is it does it have to be this like multi-step? Long term, it will be more like one big neural network, as you said, like the Japa approach and so on. But it's also harder to so to say make it do what you want if it's just like big matrices of zeros or floating point numbers that you have to like understand somehow. So in the interim, at least, it will be a lot of a mix between the kind of more interpretable, human interpretable steps.
Add traceability and some kind of traceability, I guess.
Yeah. So you can debug and see like, why is it failing? Okay, it's failing because of this. Like, can we do something smart here?
Yeah, but and it kind of maybe gives a trajectory how we reach the vision of the one-person company. If we take our friend Jesper Fredriksson, right? So he's been working a lot, trying to sort out and work with generative, LLMs in Volvo, right? And what is his approach to sort of go further in autonomy here? Like one approach is to, let's try to sort out the workflows of a data analyst or a BI reporter, and basically working with a product manager or a leader, and then can I now create an agent for you that acts as your co-worker data analyst. And ultimately this is so we're building a principal agent relationship between a product manager and someone who needs a data analyst. They then feed all the work, but they're essentially doing the work a data analyst would do in order to do the periodical reporting or doing the ad hoc analysis. So this is sort of the agent conversation, not in systems, but more about thinking about how we are replacing co-workers with systems. And ultimately, if you do that at scale, you get to the point where all the different tasks, all the different functions in a system or in a company is the one company.
So we had this like back and forth for a long time maybe, where we have different perspectives, and just to illustrate an example of how you could have my perspective is, okay,
nice.
You have a product manager, they're doing these tasks. Each task specifically, you could try to write software with normal code that does that task. Reporting, super easy, just write software that does that for you. Some of the tasks you can definitely not write code, you need LLMs, right? And I would use that perspective and say like, let's take off the tasks off your plate, and then what does your day still look like? Well, no, everything's automated.
Okay, but then we're on the same page, because I was
Just
never
names, maybe.
I was never ever interested in the technology techniques to create the coworker. I didn't care.
But you called it an agent, and that's why I'm like,
but that's But who stole the word? Who stole the word, and what does the word really mean?
Back in the 1940s, a computer was actually a human. So I guess an agent.
That's an agent.
So anyway, I think
I want to reclaim the word agent. That's what I'm trying to do.
What is the business model of Lovable?
So we help people take their idea to a product in minutes, and they pay us every month so that they can keep iterating, let them create new products every month.
It's a subscription model basically that you have. Is that the way it will continue, or do you see some other changes coming in the future?
So
you have a free tier, by the way, and you have a free tier and paid tier. Do you have any other tiers, like levels of enterprise services?
The users that are the most excited about our product, they cost us a lot of money. They cost us more money than they pay every month. So we are going to adjust the pricing because of that reason. If you look far into the future, we talk about this.
But wait, before you continue, so the paid tier, so to speak, is it a fixed fee?
Yes,
or is it
now it's fixed exactly.
So it's not usage based right now.
So the ones that use it like hundreds of times per day or something, that's very expensive.
That seems dangerous, I would say.
But the prices will of course also go down. So for the compute of all of this. But if you look farther into the future. We talked about one-person unicorns. We'll say at least we were seeing more one-person like tech startups that just build the product themselves, and they're often actually quite young because they figured out how to do this with AI, and they're for the old school developers that care a lot about the code and so on. There is something this like GitHub, which is a community. It started at least mostly as a community. But for this new generation of builders that care about the results, they just want AI to solve it for them. I don't see this community existing and this like platform to get inspired by other builders. And something else that's very interesting is that there is not the type of kind of revolution that we've seen in creation, not of product, but of video content. There is so after iPhone let you take good videos, there's been like most of the content that people consume is not Hollywood produced anymore. No. It's YouTube, TikTok, and like wherever we put this on, right?
Exactly.
And that type of distribution, someone has to create that community platform, distribution platform, and this is something that we're already seeing signs of our tool becoming, because you can see the products out in the open. So you're seeing so that's something we're slowly building towards.
So a trajectory for where this product is evolving to.
Exactly, yes. And
so going from large scale like movies to small scale videos that everyone can produce, now also going from large scale systems, software systems, going to small scale systems that anyone can build.
Yeah.
I think you said sometimes that you're aiming, or someone said that you should build one product per day or something.
Yeah, so there's a movement out. So now we launched a program for this, even that it's called like building lovable software every day. And there's I think 10 people in the for now it has been increasing rapidly of people that build an entire app, an entire product every day for a month. It's 30 days of Lovable movement, and then there's going to be a winner in this movement as well. But it started without us having the idea even.
What is some of your favorite application that has been built? Some of your, this is the coolest showcases.
But before we go there, can we just finish the business model topic there? So I think the business model is interesting. I mean, you have a free tier, you have a fixed price, you're going to change it somehow in the future. Do you think potentially, I heard someone say they're thinking about potentially like an equity model, saying that if they start a company based on Lovable, then you take a stake in the company. Do you think that could be a thing in the future?
No, I don't know. Did you hear this about us?
Maybe not.
It's a very interesting idea. I think it sounds a bit complex to manage to solve it. But yeah, I'm going to marinate on this if there's a room for it, especially
I think it would open up for a lot of people.
I mean, I said that there's someone needs to build this kind of creators platform, because there's going to be a YouTubeification of building software.
Yeah.
But there is also the case that we might just let our AI put it on autopilot and build new versions of all the SaaS software out there with AI, right? And then you need operators to run the company for each one of them, and maybe then there's a what you're saying makes sense. But my default answer is no, we're not going to do that.
One ask as well. I think so many people, especially in Europe today, are trying to figure out how to make something GDPR compliant and upcoming AI compliant. If you were to do just a button in GPT Engineer that says make it GDPR compliant and have all the documentation, checklists and whatnot produced, you would make so much money. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Make a AI Act Engineer, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, it would be the best business model, I would say, ever.
Yeah. So now we're competing globally against Devin and so on. As I mentioned, it's clear to us we have a better product.
Yes.
If we have to just zoom in on Europe only, this makes a lot of sense.
You know what? There will be there are similar rules in US as well and China as well. So I think it's not that big a difference, even though it's harder in Europe for sure. But Europe is a big market as well. So anyway,
what was the question I was going to ask? I forgot it as well. I was asking a question, but before we stopped it there. What was it? I forgot it.
The best examples of apps built
with
Lovable.
Thank you. I think that's that's a valid question.
I have two top of minds. Like there's one that was just like very well built, where you have a big screen of pixels, and then you can go in and select one pixel and change the color, and anyone can do that. There's a chat, and like you can comment on what you're trying to draw very slowly, and you can replay the entire thing that comes out. So I was like, whoa, you built a pretty like fun application. And I was thinking of another fun one that analyzes your Twitter. Are you on Twitter?
Maybe not.
It's actually it's really on point and analyzing you and roasting you in different ways. Like you got 78 cringe score because you posted this tweet, and that way be 20 plus
That's
extra.
Super funny.
That's so funny. And they built that with your
only by prompting again. But saying something more serious, someone found that one of these problems, right, that people have, and it's that you have a lot of photos, it's hard to find them and organize them. And they built an application where you upload your photos directly, and it runs them through AI. And I think it does something quite simple to propose names on all the photos and put them in folders, I think. And they launched that.
The automatic organizer. Yeah, exactly. So built on you, you have commercial products built with your product.
Yeah.
Is that a trend that commercial products are built on your product, or is it more?
Yeah, exactly. And then that's like a even stronger validation now that people are sending us screenshots of their clients after they show their first version built with our tool to their clients. They're like, "Oh, take my money! I want you to finish it and pay thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars for it."
Nice.
Awesome. And I'm trying to cross off all the questions we had planned here because we're not going to go through them in any way, but perhaps one that I'd like to hear, moving a bit perhaps from Lovable to more like philosophical kind of questions, societal kind of questions. And if we imagine Lovable, being even more successful than it already is, and companies can be built much quicker and you can make them more efficiently, what kind of skills do you, if you start with a question like this, you can either think from a company point of view what you should hire, or you can think from a personal point of view what should I educate myself in. If we start from an educational point of view, and let's say you had a kid and that in 15 years had to, or no, in 5 years, sorry, had to choose what to educate himself in, what would you suggest?
So I'll start with the quick deep dive on what does the world look like in the future.
Yeah.
I think the future is, my friend calls it fully automated luxury communism. Something like that, right?
But say that slowly.
Fully automated luxury communism.
Luxury communism.
So that sounds like most people are having to have a good life and do something they love, like spend time with other people, have a hobby that they are passionate about. I think that's what the future looks like. So to answer what you have to educate, what you should educate yourself in, I mean, my short answer is just like make sure you have fun, because that's what it's going to be about. But there are still going to be jobs in the future, right? And if you want to have a job, which might be good because then you will have more status in society, it's like timeless thing everyone actually cares more about than they think. Then maybe you want a job where people like pay you for various things. And most of the jobs in the future, I think they're going to have to do with the role of humans in this society, which is to like express and aggregate what humans like. And so like being in the government is like that. Like, okay, what regulations and so on should we have? And that's also a very, very important thing to get right, especially in times of extremely fast technological progression.
You don't think AI can know better than humans what humans like?
Yeah, I think they will definitely be, like, you will be able to build AI systems that are much better than indirect democracy that we have today, or direct democracy, but rather understands our values and preferences.
You could argue that Spotify or Netflix already does that.
Exactly. Well said. Yeah, well said. Yeah. But and then reasons out and like if we have this policy, what would happen, and like finds those. But I'm unfortunately, and this sounds a bit like optimist that it would actually be better that way. But I think we'll still have a lot of humans there, because humans trust humans.
Let me ask a bit more leading question.
Yes, I didn't answer about like what to educate yourself in. If you care about these things, I think going into and like you have very good intention, you shouldn't do it as a careerist. I think that's very bad for everyone. But if you have good intentions, maybe that's a good place to be in. And the other timeless job for humans in the future is that we can monopolize one thing over the AI systems. And it's like, okay, so there are AI celebrities or AI influencers that are getting popular, but they will always have the drawback that we will know that it's like they don't think and feel what we think and feel. So even in a fully automated luxury communism, one job will be to be an influencer or be a celebrity for some reason. So maybe that's a job that one should have in the future. And then they should talk to you guys and ask how to run good content creation.
I mean, I want to quote, I think, who was it? Gustav Söderström, actually. You know, he's the CPO or CTO of Spotify. And he said, I think, I'm going to paraphrase him now because I don't recall exactly. But he basically said, as AI, are going to handle a lot of tasks for us and potentially jobs for us in the future. We today, and I think majority of humans, go to work because we have to make a living and because we have to earn a salary so we can pay for our living and expenses that we do have. Some people work because of leisure, because they do things because they love it. It can be that they make art. It can be that you play video games and actually makes money from that, and so forth. So it can go from potentially working because you have to working because you basically are doing wasteful stuff. So today we have a certain proportion of people working in a wasteful way. It doesn't really produce value for society. It's something you do because you enjoy it, and potentially make some money for it. And that kind of balance will change in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's what his claim was.
Yeah.
So people that have to go to work just because they have to and hate it will be reduced. Can that be a future you would?
Yeah, I think it's a different phrasing on the fully automated luxury communism.
Yes.
So exactly, like I don't like the word communism itself. It's just a fun
people have
to
wrong,
express it. Yeah.
Connotations.
Everyone like we take care of everyone is what it means.
Yes.
And there will be still jobs like the ones I mentioned, and I think starting new, finding like kind of realizing new opportunities, which is like the entrepreneurial effort and all the things that go into that, which is not just being the entrepreneurs themselves. That is also going to be a human job for quite a long time, but not forever.
Just closing the topic of educational, I mean, one thing we said is we've seen, I think, in the last 10 years at least, that software development as a job has been increasingly specialized in some way. That you become, a TypeScript engineer, not just a software engineer, or you become a AI evangelist or an AI psychologist or whatnot, and you have this kind of increased specialization of job titles. Do you think that will? I hope and I believe that actually that will go down again. That humans, at least, perhaps not AI, but at least humans will become increasingly generalized, and job titles as well.
Yeah, I agree. So I agree on that. And I mean, can we talk a bit about the scariness of all of this? Like, oh, well, AI is going to take my job and so on. I just really want to make people feel more optimistic about that. Okay, I'm going to retire one day.
Yes,
and it's not when I'm 65. It's going to be soon.
And I don't have to work 40 hours a week, perhaps.
And then I'm going to find something I'm super passionate about and hang out with my friends all day. And I'm going to be fine. Like, I might not have the great super mighty status that I get from my job if you get that today. But it's going to be great. Like, it's going to be good. And that's what we should think in terms of AI coming in and making things more effective. So yeah, I really want to emphasize that. But then answering the question.
Yeah, we're going into the last question. We always end on that kind of question. So let's keep that thought for later. So what do you think in 5 years the type of engineering roles will be, basically?
Yeah. So what I had to say that before I go into the next thing. This AI revolution is to a large extent the rise of the generalist.
Yes.
That understands how things work, and they can say what's good and bad. Evaluate. No, that's bad. That's bad. That's a design, like art director. That manages. Everyone will be a manager of AIs, right?
So that's a one-person company you spoke about, basically.
Exactly. And the engineer, being an engineer, means that you understand the technical things, which is very important if you're managing these things. So you will be you will be superpowered, but you should also learn not just the technical things. You have to learn how product managers work and how to think about building something that users want, and maybe even think about how to communicate the value of what you are building, the marketing and sales. So yeah, I can recommend just going more generalist and learn as much as possible. Try as many AI tools as possible.
So if you know the fundamentals, perhaps not the super deep details, but at least you know the fundamentals of different disciplines, then you should be safe in the future, right? Is that the...
No, no one is safe. I'm going to be unemployable in the future. Maybe in my lifetime at least. So everyone is going to be taken care of, maybe not getting paid, I don't know how much, like hundreds of thousands per month as a software engineer, but you will not be safe. But in the interim, you will be able to do more things. And
but you'll be safer if you go more generalist.
I think so.
Yes. I thought, we have the final question. I thought, potentially also the time is flying away, so we have to
go. Don't worry.
So
take both.
The singularity thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just add that there will definitely be places to specialize that are very, very niche. That's often like a good career advice as well, to find something niche like jobs. This weird migrating Cobalt code bases or something weird is probably a place you can make a lot of money for a long time.
But I think what I'm telling my kids now is that, you know what, with AI and everything coming in and whatever, the bar is raised, first of all, figure out something that you are so passionate about so you can go nuts about it, because it's not only about now going deep in this, to being a generalist, but applying it to something that is super fun or something, something that you enjoy spending thousands of hours on. And I think that's also great, because if you're going to be great at something, you should also love it, and because then you can, I think with AI, you're not going to go deep on one thing, you're going to go 360 on the whole universe or whatever thing you're working on. I
cannot just nod without saying a disclaimer on this, though. I think it's actually you're doing people a disservice if you tell them, do what you love. You shouldn't say that, because the only things as a young person you have found that you love are these weird things that no one makes money from. Maybe you like art, very, very hard to make money there. So what you should tell people, I think, is try as many things as possible and do one thing of those that you think you will love, or you think you will like. It kind of, there's something that triggers you with it, but it's not. It doesn't have to.
But I like that advice better, because if it also reflects more better the psyche when you're 15, 17, 18, you don't have a clue what you love even.
Exactly.
So the point is, try everything, and then figure out where you're good at, or where you excel, where you have fun, and
where someone pays you. Exactly.
And someone pays you. So I think maybe that's a nuance. But I'm saying, like, in the end, you kind of need to like what you're doing, but to get there, try a lot of things. Okay. Yeah. I really liked you improved on that comment. Thank you.
I have to go a bit AI doomer here as well before we end. So, Anton, what would happen if you connect the GPT engineer to itself? Would we reach a singularity where it continuously improves itself without any kind of human control?
No.
Why not?
It would I was one of the early people who did this thing where you put a loop around an LLM and you let it feed itself in. And what happened then, like 2 years ago almost, but what still happens is that it gets confused and it starts producing less and less useful things. That's
what if you have not 01 but 05 then, and you start to make 05 go into its own source code and do its own training and fetch its own data and deploy itself?
Yeah, I think with 04 you will make something that slowly becomes better and better.
Without human deployment, I mean?
I mean, if you set it up correctly so that it's like it can actually measure what better means, or reliably measure what better means. Yes, I think so. It will become better and better, which is a bit crazy.
I think actually another take on this, I heard someone saying this and I thought that was interesting. There is this kind of more philosophical thing called the game of life, and it's also connected to, let me not go too deep there, but there are these surprisingly complex structures that builds up from very, very simplistic rules. You don't need an AI to do it. You can simply have like 3 or 4 if-then kind of rules that you put together and just say, start building something. And that's, it's like fractals in some sense as well. And these kind of very, very simplistic rules seems to be able to build something super, super complicated. don't you think that even if today's AI, if you were to connect them in the right setup, even with the current LLM stupidity that we have, it could start to build something that could actually be really, really profound?
Yeah. No, that's actually, I love that thought experiment. That already today, with the right wiring, it will become better and better. I definitely think that, yes, that is the case. And we don't know where it ends. We can predict at all where it ends up.
Yeah.
And that it is like, the first self-replicating, billions of years ago at planet Earth, there were a set of molecules that together started self-replicating.
Yeah, exactly.
And becoming more and more intelligent. And here we are, right?
Yeah, humans are this super complicated thing that happens from, surprisingly simplistic, like evolutionary kind of concepts in some way.
So, I think that would happen with the right wiring today. 100%. Then the question is it already, can you already do that wiring with a set of like self-sustaining energy production and self-reparation on the energy production and the chips and so on? And I think maybe actually yes, you could find this part of
it's not that far away potentially if you do the right setup there potentially.
But is that AGI? Because now we're building a self-replicating system. We might, even get to a single, some sort of simple version of Singularity where it's sort of, but is that super intelligent or is that
it
AGI?
Could potentially lead to
it. It could
AGI.
Lead to it, yes, but just because
potentially faster than
because you do something happens.
If it survives long enough, I think yes, definitely.
Yeah, because but used to there's different thought experiments going on, and what is AGI, what is superintelligence, and now we're talking about Singularity or self-improving.
Well, it is the Terminator. I mean, that is basically the setup for the Terminator. They have the cybersecurity setup or system, and you could see that humans were too slow to react to threats. So they built this system that could take actions by itself, and he pushed a button, and then the system found out that, perhaps we should simply kill humans, then we don't have a cybersecurity threat anymore.
Now, we didn't have any AI news, but what was your take on Anthropic?
Got that.
Okay, so the doomsday scenario is just so fun. And do you usually talk about this?
No, go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah. So I do think that the full
let's do the last question then, because that actually goes to that area. So if we go to the last
leave my question and
not the news.
Not the news.
No,
we didn't have time for news today. Obviously,
too
we
many
had too much
exciting
fun.
topics.
Too much fun.
Yes. Okay, Anton. So if and when AGI, I guess you do believe that AGI will happen at some point, right?
Yes.
What do you think will happen? And we can think this can be a spectrum, and we can think two extremes. One extreme is the dystopian kind of situation where it is the Terminator, where it is the Matrix, and where machines suddenly wants to kill all humans. And that wouldn't be too nice. And then you can take the other extreme, and perhaps what you said about the fully autonomous, luxurious kind of communism, where people don't have to work. You have these kind of AI that solved cancer and healthcare and medical issues, climate change and energy is free to use because we have fusion energy and so many other things. And simply we live in a future of, as some people call it, a world of abundance, where products and services are free to use. Where do you think we will end up? If you were to say from 0 to 100, so to speak, from dystopian to utopian kind of scenario?
Absolutely fascinating question, and I'm sad that not more people are talking about this question and trying to predict, and not just predict, but make sure the right thing happens.
Right, even more important.
So I love this question. I think that I have many layers of answers here. The default thing that happens is survival of the fittest and humans die. But I think that will not happen. I think that we will we will get something that is more similar to luxury, fully automated luxury. But there will be a huge swath of new problems that we know some of them today, like global conflicts. They might still be there. Horrible problem. Maybe nuclear wars will happen at some point, right? But there will be a lot of aspects of like fully automated luxury in the future. because we will, as humanity, be very smart, and we will have this intelligent system that help us figure out how to not go to the default outcome, which is survival of the fittest, where machines will be more fit than biological organisms.
But if we take that specific argument, I mean, we have a lot of organisms in the world today that are less intelligent than humans and less fit for survival, and we don't kill them and they don't die. Why should an AI that is potentially much more intelligent than humans want to kill us all?
They will just resource starve us. They will care about energy. We will not.
We don't do that.
Yes, that is exactly. So there is one more thing here. Humans have, I think, very fortunately, kind of failed. Very fortunately, we have failed in what the evolutionary algorithm that is still running,
Yes.
wants to optimize for, and we have failed by coming up with birth control. And that has caused us to not resource starve all the other humans. I think this is a short answer to like what's happening today and why we have such luxury today. There are more factors, but I think this is the short answer. If you have maybe not encoded in like your sexual drive, but you have encoded in the thing you think the first time you wake up is, I want to self-reproduce. If that's the first thing you think and the only thing you obsess about, then humans that don't have that drive, their kids will not survive. That's just how, like, very, very simple chain of thought.
I see what you mean, and I partly agree, but partly not as well.
Okay.
I mean, we had the law of the jungle, so to speak, before we have a civilized society, and people were trying to just survive the day and kill some animals to survive, etc. But that has, as we have progressed, perhaps not so much through evolution, but more from societal kind of evolution, you call it that, knowledge that we build, become increasingly civilized. So in some sense, it seems like the more knowledgeable, not that more intelligent, but at least more knowledgeable that we become, it seems to be advantageous to be civil, to live in a society. Because
I hope you're right here. I think like the default, like the simple first level thinking is what I'm saying. That's the first level thinking, where you will have, and again, like we humans, we don't have a drive to self-reproduce, or we kind of like to have sex and then we self-reproduce. But there will be a selection, and it will happen very quickly, where algorithms or agents that have a stronger drive to self-reproduce and acquire more resources, we'll get more of those, more and more of those quite quickly, and that's the default outcome. But I hope you're right in that even then, the agents themselves will start to realize, wait a second here. If I talk to these other agents and we create a one-child policy for agents, which would make a lot of sense, then and be more civilized, then we were all better off. So let's do that. And I hope that's true, even if it's not true, and the default outcome is the survival of the fittest, which is like not so nice. Then I believe again we will not end up there because the humans will be civilized. We are civilized, and we will think about the.
I have a theory that with increased knowledge and intelligence, you become increasingly civil and nice to each other.
Nick Bostrom would disagree here with orthogonality.
Not in his latest book, though.
Oh, interesting.
He has a new book, Utopia.
I have not read Utopia.
Yeah,
awesome. Now I'm definitely reading this.
So he's switched camp, I would say, a bit, or he's viewing both camps, so to speak.
Maybe that's at least the best thing to say, so that we end up there.
yes.
Because that's much more visionary.
But we had a couple of really cool, different style answers to the core question. We've done almost like a survey now. We've done it like for at least 50 individuals asking exactly that question. And a couple of key things is, are we on the spectrum here? Yes, it's our choices we make today. This is not. We shouldn't be victims to this question. We should basically think consciously about where we want to end up. Good answer. Another good answer, I found Sverker Jansson. We will have both. At the same time, we will have dystopia and utopia.
Yes, I think that's my answer too.
Because look at the world today. We have poverty, we have apartheid, and we have everything at the same time. So why would that change fundamentally?
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's an interesting take on it. What is your favorite? We had a couple of cool answers.
I'm not afraid about the AGI or ASI happening. What I am much more afraid of is humans taking control of the AI of today and abusing it.
Yeah.
That's I think if we just survive the time until we have AGI, then we will be probably in a good place, as you spoke about. But I'm really, really scared about what's happening right now in the world, in our geopolitical situation, and it's going in a strange direction.
So narrow AI gone rogue, or
that's
man
scary.
using
the man is
using AI. It's not AGI, but the man using AI and fucking it all up.
And today's AI would even be possible to use for that purpose. So it is
100%. And I actually agree so much. I have to just summarize. Like, the default outcome is bad. I think it's going to be good. The biggest risk of it not going good is what you're saying, humans having not bad intentions, but being naive. And mainly with superpowers. Like, if there is if China needs to build Skynet and the US needs to build Skynet, they have to do it really, really fast and control their population and put out a lot of AI-generated propaganda and such.
Anton Osika, it's been a true pleasure. I hope you can stay on for a bit longer afterwards as well, after the camera turns off. I think we have so many more philosophical topics to discuss.
I really want to. We're not going to do enough for it. The whole agency topic and taking it out of the system or agentic workflow, but really understand talking about agency in relation to what you're building. I think it's super interesting.
Well, it's been a true pleasure to have you here. So thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I feel like I made new friends here. It was awesome, and I'm looking forward to stay. But I really looking forward to go to the bathroom after this long.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you.